And it looks like we are live. Howdy folks, how you doing on this Sunday night? I made sure and checked my calendar this time. It's definitely Sunday. I totally streamed last week on a Saturday thinking it was a Sunday. That was really awkward. I've never done that before. Needless to say, I learned my lesson there. That was really embarrassing and funny at the same time. But we are here. What's going on, my dudes, my dudettes? I see Greg. No, wait, that's him. What's up, my dude? I see Pedro. I see Arrow. I see Nick. I see Jay and Robert and unofficial Gypsy Thor, Kieran. What's going on, peeps? I am here on this Sunday night to answer your questions. So if you have anything just off the top of your head that you desperately want answered, or maybe my opinion on, then go ahead and shoot those questions my way. That's what I'm here for. This is my time to kind of respond in a more personal way to the questions that you still might have based on maybe videos you've seen on the channel in the past, or something I've said on Twitter or somewhere else, maybe something I teased on Instagram. This is the time for you guys to get as many of those questions as you can answered in the hour or so that we run these after hours live streams. So thank you all for being here. I know this is kind of an awkward time, especially if you're in the Monday morning area, like right in Europe, Western Europe especially. It's like 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. where you live. So thank you guys, especially for watching. I see a question here. Let's start one off from Sebastian Vogt. I don't know how to say that last name, but it's a pretty cool last name. Greg, is the fractal Celsius S24 good enough for an 8600K at 5 gigahertz? And will that CPU bottleneck a 1080 Ti? Off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure the Celsius that's the mainstream Asetek pump. I want to say, if I'm not, someone correct me. I haven't actually tested the AIO, but I'm sure it performs like most other 240 mil AIOs out there. And yeah, you could hit, it depends on the chip, right? All CPUs are going to be bin differently, so you can't just say, yeah, it'll get to 5 gigahertz with an 8600K, because some chips are going to require more voltage, some aren't. And the chips that require more voltage, that are more stubborn, are going to run hotter as a result, because you are pumping more juice through the CPU, if you will. So, that question's a little vague, but I would say in general, you could get pretty close to 5 gigahertz. I don't think that you should, just deem your chip a terrible chip if it doesn't hit 5 gigahertz. If you can hit 4.9 even, I think that's good enough, especially for, an i5 that costs around $200. I think that's really good. Okay, I see one from... Let's see, scrolling up here. Jeffy, I love the question. It's good. Jeffy always has the good questions, folks. You guys know Jeffy. 8696. Why does it take 15 minutes to make minute rice? And that's a good question. Sorry if I peaked your audio. I can turn myself down a little bit if I need to. Yeah, it's actually, that's very thought-provoking. I appreciate the the inquisitive thinking there. This is why it's called Science Studio, right? We're here to answer these questions. I apologize for the weird noise in the background. Pepsi's doing some really stupid stuff. She's really starting to piss me off. Pepsi, hey, psst, stop it. Stop it. She just turns around at me, she meows, and then she goes back to what she's doing. Cats in general. Kieran, do you think it would be worth buying a 1080 after the newer gen cards have come out, since it'll be cheaper? I don't know, Kieran. It depends on what the prices are. GTX 1080, I wouldn't pay more than maybe... It's tough. I would put the 1080 about on the same price point that I would put the 980 Ti when the 1070 rolled out. Remember, because the 980 Ti and the 1070 are very comparable cards, and now with the newer NVIDIA drivers and stuff, I'm sure the 980 Ti is degraded just a little bit in terms of performance. You are not going under that monitor. No, ma'am. But if we have the new stuff out, let's say the 1180, 1170, whatever they happen to be called, I wouldn't pay more than maybe $300 to $350 for a 1080. It's still going to be an epic card, especially for that price. But again, with the new stuff coming out, we don't know exactly how big these margins are going to be between generations of cards. If they were as big as they were from Maxwell to Pascal, you might just want to buy the lower end, next gen GPU. So it all depends. We're going to be testing all this stuff, so stay tuned. But I can't give you exact figures right now because I don't have the cards in hand. Bazinga, I think with that $5 super chat, my dude, what's going on again? What brand SAS internal card do you recommend? I don't know. Let's see if I can find one. Let's see. I would say, Pepsi, hey, get out. You guys just see that? Okay. I'm gonna link you actually, I don't know if I can link in the chat. I'm gonna put a couple of the SSDs that I use in here, and I'm not gonna affiliate link them or anything like that, but I'll just show you what I use. I'm gonna put this one. Put this one in there. That's what I do. Did you guys see her knock something down? I don't know if you could actually see on camera if she did anything, but should have gotten Coke. Good question. I use these 500 gig drives all the time. Actually, this is 860 Evo. That's a little better than the 850. But those are that's the SATA drive I use all the time. I have used a few different brands of hard drives. I've used Toshiba drives. I've used one Seagate drive. It was an older drive, albeit, but still. WD Blues, and it's been, I don't know. It's been kind of a mediocre experience with hard drives. It's really tough to just justify a hard drive when you could buy storage pretty cheap now. You know, 3D NAND and stuff is coming down in price quite a bit, especially since launch. But I would kind of stay with Samsung quality stuff. And then hard drives, I would stick with maybe WD. That would be my best bet. I see good questions here. What do you think about i5 8400 versus R5 2600 for gaming? I have a video on that exact question, so I would defer you to that video first. i5 8400. Would you? Let's see. To be honest, some people have just showed up to see the cat. I'm sure, dude. I'm really sure. Oh gosh. But you know, Pepsi, she gives me company here, right? While I almost said Lisa. While Lisa's gone, you know, I'm all alone over here, so I got a cat just because I just need company, I guess. Mark and Puff asked if I use Space Engine, and the answer is no, but many people have told me to actually use Space Engine. I guess it's a good benchmarking tool. If I'm hitting the table and that's showing up on the mic, then I'll stop doing that, sorry. Let's see, have you ever tried the Ducky One keyboard, and if not, have you thought about reviewing it? I've never reviewed a Ducky keyboard. I know that they're pretty, I know that the first place that I ever heard of the Ducky brand was from Luke from Minus Tech Tips. I can't speak tonight. I don't know what's going on, guys. And he was like, that was like one of his first mechanical keyboards, right? I think was a Ducky, and it looked pretty cool, but it just looked a little retro to me. Like I don't really care much about like the aesthetics of keyboard, as long as it clicks and feels good and has all the functions I need. I'm fine with whatever. It doesn't have to be RGB or anything. I set all these colors to either white or like yellow or purple by default. I don't do the rainbow stuff. So that's just my take on it. I wanted to go back up here. Says Nick card. I don't use anything like that in my system. I'm very basic. I've never touched anything like that before. Sorry, I thought you were talking about storage drives, like just serial attached drives. I'm scrolling down to, let's see, Jonathan, can you overclock an i5 6600K on an Asus B150i? No, well, no, you can't. Any business grade board, you're not going to be able to overclock with Intel. Blame Intel for that. Let's see, scrolling up. How is the RX 550 in 2018? I mean, it's lower end. You're going to play some 1080 stuff in it for sure. I would say medium settings in most cases, depending on the title. Obviously, Witcher 3 is going to need to be turned down quite a bit, but you could play something like Rocket League no problem with a 550. So it's going to depend on the game largely, but I would say no more than 1080p is the max with that card for sure. Okay, this is a good question here. I like this. The Demon Mitt, I think that's how you say your name. In your opinion, what is the fair upcharge percentage that system builders can charge? And I actually have firsthand experience with this because I did for a while build PCs, sell them on Craigslist. That was how I cycled through inventory and was able to review parts before I had established connections with companies to send me stuff for review. So when I would sell a computer on Craigslist, let me just use an example here. Excuse me. One of my first systems that I sold on Craigslist was like a $500 like Core i3 build, and I sold that build. I think I sold it for $550, and if I didn't sell it for, I know I put it up there at first for $600, and I think I took $550 for it or $540, just because people deal with 20s, so you just say 220s on top of 500s. So I think that was what I charged, and I kind of felt, I kind of realized how the market was responding to the price points, especially back when I was doing it. It wasn't like a super hot thing. People weren't just building PCs in my area to flip them and sell them. So I think that the surge now with PC interest and stuff in the building community, which is great, by the way, I think that in and of itself kind of like flooded the market, and we have the same thing right now with YouTubers, right? The tech tubers, there's so many of them now, so many smaller channels, and they're all trying to gain traction. And I'm fine with that. I'm not going to complain about it. And so that's something that I've kind of noticed. When it was easier when I was doing it back then in my area because not many people were competing. So I would charge about 10% up charge of what I paid for the system, and it's a flat 10%. So if the build's $500, then I'll charge you $50 to put it together. Chances are it's a cheaper build. It's going to be pretty simple, straightforward, easy to cable manage, plug and play, there you go. But if it's a $5,000 system, it's likely going to be custom cooled, right? Because of all the extra hardware, it's going to cost a lot of money. The blocks, the radiators, the fittings, the reses, the pumps, the lighting, the fans, all that good stuff. It really gets pricey, but all that takes a lot more time to assemble. So I don't know if I would charge $500, but I probably would charge something close to that because of how much more time is involved in getting these things into this really expensive build, making it look like a $5,000 build should, in my opinion. And I try to be as perfect as possible when it comes to building these things. You guys saw my latest video with the custom painting and all that stuff. If I get a fingerprint in the paint, if I get a small speck that's like not supposed to be there, it bothers the heck out of me. Oftentimes I just redo the whole thing. So finding the right builder is definitely important too, but I wouldn't pay any more than 10% upcharge for the system. That's just my rule of thumb, only because that's how I usually deal with it as well. I wanted to see, we had Medhage. Thank you for that $2.79 Canadian super chat. I wish you had asked a question with that too. But let's see, what's $2.79 Canadian? So like 40 cents US. I'm just kidding. I'm just hating on the Canadians up north a little bit. Your currency is kind of, I don't know, our currency's all over the place too. But I can never keep up with like the Canadian to USD conversion rates because they seem to be always changing. Bazinga, I'm gonna get to this. What, my dude, $20 super chat. You're gonna pay for lunch for like a week? Yeah, I eat cheap. Don't judge me. I eat ramen and I have a decent dinner, but like I'll have ramen and like chicken nuggets and just kind of get by in the morning and in the afternoon, and then at dinner time I'll buy like those cheap pork chops and grill those because it's also cheap. I'm a very cheap person, honestly. Bazinga, $20 super chat. Thank you, my dude. Charity challenge. You, Paul, Kyle, Jay, Steve. GN Steve, I will donate $2 per push-up that each of you do within a 10-minute time frame. Hold on, why is this stupid chat? I'm just gonna pop it out. I can't read the whole message. Swipe it over. This looks juicy though. This looks juicy. All right. Okay, $2 per push-up that each of you can do in a 10-minute time frame to St. Jude Children's Hospital in the name of the winner. $50 to the winner, posted end of day. $2 per push-up that you do in the name of the winner, $50 to the winner, posted end of August. Oh, that's pretty cool. I'll take a screenshot of that and see if these guys want to do it. Something interesting, and it's healthy, and it's for a good cause. I like that. Nintendo Prime, maybe we can match it too. Nintendo Prime, $1.99. What's the best budget CPU for 4K video rendering? Budget? I mean, what's your budget? That's a subjective term. I would say in the realm of R5 territory. I know it seems like I recommend that CPU a lot, but it's good bang for the buck from a video editing perspective because it does have multi-threading. Like simultaneous multi-threading is a huge step up from a Premiere standpoint. And I say Premiere because that's what I'm most familiar with. But you could get by with an i5 CPU as well. And probably you might even get by a little better because the i5 has the iGPU, so quick sync and stuff functions a bit better because you have that second graphics processor, if you will. So I would say budget. Don't go into like R3, i3 territory. Stay in the 5s or higher. You can go used as far back as maybe Ivy Bridge or I would say Ivy Bridge is probably as far back as I would go. Haswell would be a safer bet. And if you go back as far as Haswell, then try to stick with i7s. I wouldn't go to Bulldozer Pile Driver. That's just my take on it. RealCraft, what do you think about the 2018 13-inch MacBook Pro to only feature the 8th gen CPUs on the Touch Bar versions? Wait, so I didn't know this. So the 8th gen CPUs, so the Kaby Lake R, right? So the quad-core ultra-low power CPUs, those ones are only available in the Touch Bar 13-inch MacBook Pro. So what are in the non-Touch Bar, like mine? What would be in my next gen 13-inch non-touch bar version? Is it just like a recycled Skylake or whatever? That blows. I didn't know that. I'll have to read more about that. Prabal, i7 8700 non-K versus i5 8600. I would pick the 8700 all day, because the 8700, even though you can't overclock it, still turbo's pretty high. I think, what, 4.4 gigahertz, something, I don't remember, but it still turbos decently, and you're not going to need a super overkill cooler to keep those temps in check, because it doesn't turbo that high. But the hyperthreading is going to go a long way on that 8700. Okay, here, Nick H. Hey, Science Studio, what are your thoughts on the Cooler Master Silent Pro Hybrid 1300 watt 80 plus fully modular gold power supply? I've never heard of it, but I will check it out and let you know. Maybe I can get him to send one for review. Although I have no use for a 1300 watt power supply. Is it like a perfectly silent PSU? Is there no fan in it? Is that what the special thing is? Silent Pro? That's what I would get from that. Interesting. Yoyender says, stay away from Cooler Master PSU. There are some pretty bad Cooler Master PSUs. There are some pretty bad every kind of manufacturer PSU or rebrand PSU out there. But there are good Cooler Master PSUs as well. I know that Johnny Guru reviewed, it was one of the Cooler Master power supplies. I can't remember the name of it, but he praised that thing because of how well it was built, the soldering, all that good stuff that he goes through. I invite you guys to watch, or not watch, but to look up Johnny Guru power supply reviews, because I don't, like I said, my recent power supply review, I don't have the equipment to test that stuff, but they do. So I recommend Johnny Guru. He's my first go-to when it comes to power supply reviews. Proper power supply reviews. Okay, I'm scrolling up. I see William Humphreys. What's going on, Will? What's up, Will? I'll charge 450% if you want me to sign it. What am I looking at? Oh. Okay. I see. Have you ever used Linux, Ubuntu? What are your thoughts on it from a perspective, use versus non-use? The only Linux I've touched was in a Chromebook, because I had it was an old Chromebook. This is before you could get access to the Android Play Store, Google Play Store. I had a I had a Chromebook that I hated the operating system, Chrome OS. So I did something to it. I basically just followed an instructional forum, and I flashed Linux on it. And then I regretted that, and I went back to Chrome OS, because like the Linux, I'm so used to just Windows and Mac OS, like simplicity. I mean, I know Windows isn't very simple, but compared to Linux, in my eyes, it's simple. I'm not like a hardcore software coder. I don't like having to run type in commands and stuff to I don't know, run applications. It's just a different experience, and I wasn't ready to dive into that at the time, so I kind of regretted it. That's about the only experience I have with Linux. Not that I wouldn't be up for trying it again. It's just I gotta find the time for it. Okay, scrolling down here. Adam Stevenson, love your channel and your content. Thank you, I appreciate that, Adam. Can you possibly do a video about a fresh Windows 10 install and what you would recommend to do on setting it up? A gaming setup, that is. Thanks a lot. I have a recent video about, was it a PC build? I'm pretty sure it was just a PC build, and in that build video, it's a recent video, I talk about how to install Windows 10 onto a newly built PC. So that, and if you have to, partition drives and stuff for new volumes for storing data and whatnot, all of that stuff is discussed in that video. I would link it to you, but I want to get to more questions. You'll know which video it is though on the channel. I keep having to put her on the ground because she'll bite stuff. It gets annoying. Let's see, scrolling down. Zeke Freak says, streaming on a dual core, good luck with that. Good luck. I mean, I guess you could, here's what you could probably do. On an i3, you could probably use, the NVIDIA encoder, and so use NVENC, and then you could probably get away with running a dual core for games. I mean, it would take most of the load off your CPU from the streaming department, but you're going to be kind of choking your graphics card just a little bit, depending on the card that you have. So I don't know, but that would be a really difficult thing to do. Maybe a video in the future, streaming on a dual core system, just to see how good or bad it is. Okay, I see some good stuff in here. Let me get really quick through the super chat so I can answer the other questions I see in here. Okay, so here is one from Unofficial Gypsy Thor. Thank you, I appreciate that. Professional. The smallest NVMe SSD you would use. You mean like storage-wise? I would say 240. I wouldn't go at like 240 or 256. I wouldn't go to 120 because half that, if not more, is going to be dedicated to your operating system. At which point, what else are you going to use that drive for? I mean, like I like to have files that I use every day, like Adobe Premiere Pro. I want to have that on my M.2 drive. I don't want to have that on my hard drive. Unless I have extra solid state drives and I'm not worried about the reads or writes on those. But assuming it's a fast NVMe, I want it to be as big as possible so I can put as many programs on it as possible so that the loads are near instant. That's weird. This power supply just got really loud. It's just like full blast. It's the EVGA G3. That's weird. It's pretty loud right now. Taipei Taiwan 10 says Johnny Guru works at Corsair now, right? I did not know that. That's a good addition to the team, that's for sure. I'm gonna scroll down to. I see you, Nate. I'll get to you in a second. Per ball, best mouse and keyboard for FPS. I use Cooler Master mice and keyboards just because I'm not a very complicated guy, you know. So I would stick to whoever you're comfortable with. It's very difficult to switch gaming mice once you've been used to one for a long time, especially the shape, the positions of the buttons and stuff. Keyboards aren't as important for me, but the mouse makes a big difference in first-person shooters. I would weigh the mouse choice more and just pick one that feels good in the hand. That's really going to matter more than anything, I think. You know, most sensors nowadays are pretty good. Nate Gatsby, thank you for that $5 super chat, my dude. I just upgraded to a Ryzen 5 1600 and can't get a stable overclock on it. Even 3.6 gigahertz is it possible? I'm being limited by my 2133 DDR4. Your RAM shouldn't limit your overclock to that extent. 3.6 is pretty low. You should be able to hit 3.8, 3.9, unless you just have an absolute dud of a CPU. Let's see. I would say check load line calibration. Off the top of my head, that I'm feeling maybe you have like, I don't know, that's tough. Check LLC, check your vCore, obviously. Your vCore for that should be around 1.3 if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that, double check, but it should be around that voltage. So just make sure that you're not being limited by anything. You know, reset your CMOS to, I would just do that straight up. To make sure you don't have any software conflicts or anything like that. That's really low frequency though. I wish I could help you more, but unless I'm there, it's difficult to kind of troubleshoot and walk you through it. You pick Hannah says, just watched your Paint Your PC tutorial from 2015. I must say your presentation and confidence is greatly improved. I appreciate that. It felt really cool. It was like nostalgic, going back, you know, to like the roots of the channel, custom painting stuff. I had a lot of fun painting. I'm much better now at painting than I was in those videos. In those videos I use Plastidip mostly, and Plastidip is... Oh, give me a second. Stop it. She just climbed on top of the monitor. My monitor, my Asus monitor, that's my gaming rig right there. She climbed on top of that, and just her claws just went all the way down the front side of the screen. That poor thing. She also... She like... Cats are a huge investment. Okay, from a time standpoint, because they're very difficult to manage sometimes. Anyway, but yeah, I appreciate you watching. And that was that was a long time ago. It was like 2 or 3 years ago. Let's see here. Scrolling down. Thoughts on iBuy Power PCs? I'm not really a fan of pre-builts. Pre-builts are just kind of... Unless you do like the NZXT BLD stuff, like that looks pretty good. A few other manufacturers that use parts that you know, right, are going in there that you picked. So you're basically just paying for the build service itself. But pre-builds tend to cut corners, and they do that to increase margins. Obviously, they put crap power supplies in there. Most of the time, the power supply is a compromise. So always try to check to see what it is. If it's not listed, it's probably a no-name brand that's not even 80+ rated, and that'll be the first thing in your system to go. I guarantee it. So be careful with that stuff. Everything else you can pretty much see what they put in there. So the main reason why, though, I don't go out there and just recommend iBuyPower and CyberPower, whoever else, is because a lot of times in the cheaper stuff they put crappy power supplies in there, and to me, having a terrible power supply in a system that's worth at least $600 is like putting terrible tires on a really expensive car. So anyway, we're gonna scroll down now to, I see you, Will. Bazinga, thank you, Bazinga, again for another $5 super chat, my dude. Greg, does Pepsi train you for when Lisa comes home, or will you claim the fifth? I think I'll have to plead the fifth on that one, although I'm sure Lisa knows what I want to say. Yeah, look, it's tough, guys. It's really tough being apart. It's something that I don't wish on anybody. It's a really terrible thing to have to go through. At the same time, I mean, it strengthens you. We have our fights just like everybody, and I think what makes it worse is that when you're apart and you have these conflicts, it's more difficult to resolve because you're not there. Like for those who don't know, Lisa's my wife, and she lives in Germany, and we're working on being able to be together. But because she's a German citizen and I'm a U.S. citizen, that of course causes conflict, at least from a political standpoint. So we're trying to get paperwork sorted out and stuff so that she can be here with me permanently. But right now it's just we have to call. I mean, that's all we can do. We just voice call, we video call, we do what we can, we play games together. But that's really the extent of it. Not being together physically is tough, and that's something that we've had to kind of just endure, work through. Yeah, she's a lot like me, believe it or not. So chances are, whatever I feel about her, she feels about me too. So at least I kind of know where her mind is, right? Because we think a lot alike. But that's my take on it. Does RAM speed really matter, Liu? It really comes down to the platform that you're on. RAM speed's going to matter more or less for architectures that favor it. When you talk about the Infinity Fabric for AMD, right? That's why AMD tends to be less RAM frequency timing tolerant, because the Infinity Fabric is tied directly to RAM timings, RAM frequency, and that's why Ryzen first gen, right, Summit Ridge, was difficult to get XMP even enabled on stuff that was higher than 2666 megahertz because the architecture itself just wasn't compatible with some of those higher module frequencies. That's why you had specific modules, specific kits designed for Ryzen CPUs to actually get that kind of coordination going, right? So in a nutshell, with second gen Ryzen, what we're seeing is that ability to just enable XMP profile out of the box. Like I've ran an old G-Skill RGB kit, Trident Z kit, straight up 3000 megahertz. This came out way before second gen Ryzen stuff did, and XMP straight out of the box. Awesome, and it does increase your frame rate. It really does, again, it's because it's tied to the Infinity Fabric, so that determines the latency, right, between CCX communications. So cores within a particular CCX cluster can communicate super fast, right, because they're essentially aren't as many channels, aren't as many roadblocks to go through for those cores to communicate. But then when you have two CCXs, right, two CCXs of 4 cores apiece, and we're getting into Ryzen architecture here, but in order for those two clusters to communicate, they have to transmit data via the Infinity Fabric, and the Infinity Fabric incurs a lot of latency, so you have a lot of lags and stalls when processes require multi-CCX, processing, basically, and that's why RAM frequencies are important, right, for Ryzen, because if those RAM frequencies are higher, the timings are lower, then those communications between CCXs are faster, and that means you have less latency. That means that you have less of a bottleneck when it comes to processing in general, when it comes to gaming even, especially in CPU bottleneck situations. So there you go. There's your spill of Ryzen architecture and how it affects. We have a video dedicated to this, by the way, so I'm just throwing that out there. Alan Smith, do I need IPS screens if I'm running them in portrait mode? Depends on what you're doing. Again, if you're running them in portrait mode, then I would question what you want to do on it. If you're just having stuff displayed just temporarily, it's not going to make a big difference whether you go with TN, IPS, VA, AHVA, whatever. It's all going to be pretty much the same if you're just glancing at it occasionally. If you were going for IPS for like your dedicated main gaming rig, then that's something to consider. Watch for ghosting, look at response times, input lag, try to get all those things sorted out beforehand. Some older IPS panels typically, and the cheaper ones tend to have ghosting issues, but that's really the only downside with going with IPS. It's going to be a bit more expensive, but you're paying for better quality image, and we have an IPS video dedicated to the actual architecture, the technology that is interplane switching, and that will sort things out for you if you're looking at like the ways that liquid crystals turn when charged and all that good stuff. It's all in that video. Anyway, I see another one. Bazinga, my dude. My dude, you're just throwing cash at me, my dude. Greg, you need to learn. Arguing with a woman is like reading a software license agreement. In the end, you have to ignore everything and click agree. I like that a lot. Oh gosh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I wonder what Lisa would say to that. That's all I'm gonna say. Oh jeez. I see you, Kansei755. I see you, my dude. How's it going? Lucky Eye. Yo, Greg, I've been following you for almost 1 year now. Greetings from Venezuela. Watching this on 240p. Keep up the great work. I appreciate that. Thank you for the loyalty and support from down south. Venezuela's north of the equator, right? So Ecuador is kind of where that cuts through, northern part of Brazil. So you're just above the equator then. Interesting. Let's see here. DDR5 coming anytime soon. I don't follow stories like that unless they're pertinent and relevant, in the current time period. So any rumor or anything like that, I kind of tend to shy away from. I don't like talking about stuff like that until we have definitive facts. Speaking of which, the GTX 1180, that's what most people are calling it, that leaked PCB, right? It's just the board. There aren't components soldered to the board. It's just the board itself. I was looking at that, and I noticed, a few of the other channels who were covering this were questioning whether it was like GDDR5X or GDDR6. Well, you could physically see the number of pins for each module, for each memory module that wraps around the CPU. Obviously, it's not HBM2 because that would be in the die of the GPU. Well, next to the GPU die, I should say. But it's on the chip. It's literally on the chip. You can see it off to the sides of the die usually. So we know that it's not HBM2 on the 1080, or whatever this card is. It's an 8+6 pin, so it's probably a higher tier card. That's why people are assuming it's a 1080. And then when you look at those modules wrapped around it, you can see the number of pins that those modules have. So 170 pins, BGA, right? Because the pins themselves, they're kind of ball shaped, but they solder those to the PCB. And the number of pins that are on the board tell you what kind of module it is. So GDDR5 is a 170 BGA. That means there's 170 pins underneath that memory module that connect to the board. So there's 170 physical connections, right? And then 190 BGA is, I'm pretty sure it's 190. I'm trying to remember these off the top of my head. 190 BGA is GDDR5X. So you can count these, right? So you can look at a board. If there was nothing else on the board, you didn't know anything else about it, but you saw the number of memory module pins, then you could tell what kind of memory it was running. If it was GDDR5, GDDR5X. Well, GDDR6 has 180 BGA, so slightly more, 10 more than GDDR5, but 10 less than GDDR5X. And this is confirmed on Micron's own website, and NVIDIA cards use, for the most part, Micron memory modules. And so 180 BGA on their website, straight up, is GDDR6. So that board does have GDDR6 pinouts on it. So we know it's a next-gen card. It's not some fake card, unless somebody really thought this through. But that's the extent of which I was kind of looking at particular details on that board. That's about all I've gotten. So yeah, ball grid array. I said PGA. I screwed that up. PGA is the pinout. That's the literal pin grids that you see on like the bottoms of Ryzen CPUs. AMD CPUs for the most part are PGA. And then yeah, BGA is ball grid. Griffin, hey Greg, your videos are amazing, but I have one question. Would you recommend 2nd gen Ryzen over Intel, considering the newer i7 are going to ditch hyperthreading? I don't know where you read that, but I don't believe the newer i7s are going to ditch hyperthreading. I think that's a little far. I mean, if that's true, then that's disappointing. But I'm sure that might be their way of pumping the i9, I guess. But I've always favored, I like both CPUs, but 2nd gen Ryzen is going to probably be the better value. It usually is. It was last time, right, with Summit Ridge. So I imagine that'll be the same way this time around. What's the difference between a 970 EVO SSD and a Samsung 500 gig? Well, you have 970 EVO 500 gig drives, 960 EVO 500 gig drives, 950 EVO 500. I mean, usually the difference is going to be your read and write speeds. So check the reads and writes. Usually for an SSD, it's somewhere around 500 read, 500 write. And if you go to something like a 2-lane M.2 is going to be somewhere around 1,000 reads, 800 writes, around there, and then you step up to a 4-lane M.2s and NVMe M.2s, and then you're going to get up to 3,000 or so reads and 2,000 to 3,000 writes in most cases. So it's all about speeds. That's why these different drives exist. So that's what you should really pay attention to. That and the price are really all that matter in my book. Jay's random videos. Can we know what the next video is going to be about? Excuse me. It has something to do with Windows 10. I will tell you that much about it. I'm still doing testing currently, but it will have something to do with a setting in Windows 10 that many people are questioning. Okay, here, I'm going to scroll down. Let's see here. Good stuff, good stuff, good stuff. Okay, we have, okay, Jonathan Paniagua asks, off the top of your head, do you know a motherboard compatible with an i5 6600 and an i7 7700 or 8700? So 6600, so 6000 series is going to be Z170. That would be your chipset for an unlocked SKU. And then Z270 for 7700, Z370 for your 8700. That's, again, the Z chipset. So just keep that in mind. There are more than just Z series chips out there. Chipsets, I should say, for motherboards. But you know, each of those CPUs has a different chipset of a different compatibility. You can put KB League boards. You know, you can pair Z270 with a 6600 or 6700K. I'm confusing myself. Dang it! But you guys know what I'm trying to say. Anyway. Okay, scrolling down here. Alan, thank you for that $10 super chat. My dude, g'day, watching from Australia. Love your work. Keep it up. Also, are we going to see more videos on your Audi? Alan, I hate to disappoint you, but I sold my Audi. Well, I traded it in. I upgraded to an Infiniti Q60 Red Sport. So I ditched all-wheel drive. In this model, the Q60, I have rear-wheel drive, but I got 400 ponies, and I have about 350 pound-feet of torque. That's stock. But I love the technology in the car. I love how it handles. I love how it looks. And I got a 100K powertrain, 10-year warranty, so because it was certified pre-owned. So that's my baby for the time being, and I love her. I miss the all-wheel drive. I definitely do. Look, the S5 was planted. Like, that thing was planted, and it sounded great with that exhaust on it. It was a V8. But this is a V6 twin turbo, and it's more tunable. So I think in the future, you know, running some mods apart from just an exhaust and an intake system, you know, lower downpipes maybe, JB4, maybe even a fresh ECU tech tune, something along those lines. All that would eventually void my warranty. But when I get to the point where I'm just like, I don't care about the warranty, you know, I trust the car, then maybe, sorry about that, then maybe I'll consider doing a bit more. And I'll be sure to cover all that in the channel. I know you guys, some of you, like the car stuff. Okay. Scrolling down here, scrolling down. Tech Runs. A fun fact, did you guys know that Science Studio Greg used to be a gym freak? Neither did I. Yeah, used to be. I talked about it a little bit in my last live stream. Let's see here. We have a $2 super chat from Kryptonic HD. What's going on, Kryptonic? We have mod status transfer request to Tech Crimson. Yes, sir, I got you good. Here we go, add mod. There you go, Tech Crimson. That's Kryptonic HD, who's already a mod, so I just transferred the status there. Gear Seekers, $5 super chat. What is 5? Oh, that's Australian. Yeah, that's right. This is for the cat. Don't spend this on yourself. You hear that, Pepsi? Pepsi girl, where'd you go? Oh, she's back there. Here, let me see if you guys can see her. There she is. Hey, Pepsi. They want to see you, baby girl. They want to see you. Huh? See them? It's really dark. Anyway, she just chills. I feel bad for her. Sometimes I'll work for, oh gosh, like we're talking maybe 12, 14 hours a day. Like I'll work from noon to 3 a.m. and that poor cat just has to just lay there. You know, she's just sitting there watching me do stuff. I'm not giving her any attention. You know, every now and then I'll take a break and play with her for a little bit. And she just gets all, like, excited and bites the crap out of me, and it hurts, you know? Like, I can't keep doing that stuff. So, yeah, that's my experience with cats. Joe Clancy, how bottlenecked am I with a 6GB 1060 and a 4.4 gigahertz FX 6300? That 6300 is going to be your bottleneck for sure. In 90% of situations, I would say, your next upgrade would be, I would say, your CPU and your motherboard and your RAM, because you're in DDR4. That platform's DDR3 based. So I would say R5 maybe even R7 if you want to step it up a little bit more. But that's about where you're going to be. I think if you already got a 1066 gig, you know what's up, you know what's next to upgrade. I think that platform's got to go. Excuse me. Let's see here. Scrolling down. So do I need to have a 970 EVO, which is M.2, or a Samsung 500 gig SSD, which is best? Or can I do, Clay, you got to look at the reads and write speeds. The reads and write speeds of that M.2, I'm pretty sure, just off the top of my head, they're going to be higher than that 500 gig SSD. Okay? I mean, solid state storage, right? The SSDs in general are drives that don't require spinning components, right? They're not disk, they don't write on disks. They write in chips and memory chips. So it, you know, calling one an SSD and calling one not an SSD, or that's not correct technically. You have SATA SSDs, and then you have M.2 PCIe based SSDs, and that's the big difference there. You'll see the speed jumps, but look at the reads and write speeds, look at the prices. You'll see that the ones that are much faster drives are going to cost a lot more. That's the reason for it. Let's see. I'm nervous about, okay, Ratchet, his name's Ratchet Ho. I'm not saying it's Ratchet Ho. I'm nervous about overclocking, but I understand the benefits. It's my very first build. Should I look into it more? I have an i7 7700K. I mean, yeah, you got an unlocked SKU. I would definitely try. I mean, you can just barely bump voltage. Sometimes you can leave voltage in auto, but when you do that, sometimes the BIOS will throw too much voltage at the CPU, more than you need, so you gotta fine tune it a little bit. Don't be afraid of blue screens of death. Just clear your CMOS, start from scratch. You'll be okay, you'll get used to it. We have overclocking guides on this channel. Other channels have them as well that I condone watching, and you'll get the feel for it very quick. Gregory says, you build all these gaming PCs, but do you game? Yes, I do. I game on my personal rig right here to my right. I game while I was playing PUBG just this afternoon, actually. Good question, though. In 2018, should I choose an M.2 drive or a 2.5-inch SSD? Look, I've been using, SATA drives for a long time, and they're plenty fine in 90% of cases. Once you go up to a PCI-based M.2 drive, it's faster, but I just don't see, I don't think the prices have matched up yet for me to justify buying one of those over a 2.5-inch drive that you could get for much cheaper in most cases. Every now and then you find a cheap M.2 drive, and they're going to be a little faster, even if they're 2-lane, PCIe, whatever. But it's you got to find the right deal, and it's easier to find cheap 2.5-inch drives in most cases. And I think they're plenty fine. Don't go to a hard drive. If you're building a new PC, try your best to not use a hard drive as your primary drive where your operating system is stored. You can have it as a secondary drive with Steam games and all that stuff. Perfectly fine. I do that, but don't load your operating system on your hard drive. That is something that once you get used to an SSD speeds, it's so difficult going back to a hard drive. It really is. Okay, I missed a couple super chats here. We got one from, Jace McKinstry. What's going on, Jace? $10 super chat, my dude. Thank you. Is excuse me, Emotus making updates to the StoreMI software? Oh, since Emotus, yeah. Would you recommend it to people on a budget since B450 boards are out now? I'm actually in the process. I hate to do this because you threw money at me, but I don't want to spoil anything yet. I'm in the process of putting together a StoreMI video, all about AMD StoreMI, how to use it, and the true benefits of it. I think it's actually pretty good for what it is, and this is something I didn't even know about until AMD asked me to put something together, review it. They'll send me stuff, and they sent me an SSD, and they sent me a hard drive, and then they sent me a 2600, I think, and they're like, here, have fun with it. And I haven't finished the video yet because other things have come up, but I want to get back to that video. So that right there, your super chat, boom, I'm going to do that video, and I'm going to try to get it done this week. So thank you for bringing that up again. That's a good question. And yeah, I think StoreMI is viable for many people on that platform. So stay tuned. Wakar Khan, $10 super chat, my dude. Hey man, love the content you pump out. I have a 4690K right now. Gets a good i5 unlocked SKU. Should I upgrade to the 4790K or build an entirely new system? This is just strictly for gaming. Strictly for gaming, I think you're good enough with if you're asking whether or not you should upgrade to a 4790K or not, I say stick with the 4690K. If you're asking if you should switch from the 4690K to a totally new system, it's going to depend on from Haswell to Coffee Lake, you're going to see upwards of 15-ish% frame rate increases in CPU bound titles. That's just, I'm just raw dogging off the top of my head here, but in a nutshell, that's roughly what you're going to see. If you think that's justifiable, if you're getting a whole new platform, remember you're going to need DDR4, right? Because you're on DDR3 platform right now. That's going to be tough to push out. But you could, if you feel like justifying it in your head, right, from a price perspective, I don't think there's anything wrong with upgrading. But you might want to wait one more gen. Wait one more gen. If you want to stick with Intel, I would wait just a few more months until you get the new stuff out, because that will be an even more substantial upgrade, I think, especially with what we might see from Intel with the i9s. So let's see. Okay. SCUG, Scug asks, what does a 1080 Ti need? A 750 watt or an 850 watt? You could get by with a 1080 Ti, you can get by with a 650 watt, I mean, or 600 watt even. I've run a 1080 Ti on a 600 watt power supply, and it was a 600 watt power supply, and it was an i5 70, I think it was an i5 7600K, I want to say, and I'm pretty sure it was pulling close to like 400, 450 from the wall. Though I still had plenty of headroom. I'm pretty sure I was slightly past my peak efficiency curve, the peak efficiency point on that efficiency curve. But nonetheless, a 600 watt power supply should do it, unless you're like, if you're hyper overclocking your 1080 Ti, you might get close to that boundary. But in most cases, 600 to 700 watts is a sweet spot. Anything higher than that is just gravy. You're just future-proofing yourself. Although most advancements usually are pretty power conservative anyway. And look at the difference between the 980 Ti power draw, right, for its performance value, compared to the 1070, which was a comparable card at the time, which has improved slightly since we've had NVIDIA updates roll out for over a year. But it was a much more efficient card. It required less power, had a lower TDP, and we got comparable performance. So you could look at it from that perspective and say, well, I'm still probably going to be future-proof, but I don't think it hurts going for an 850 watt power supply if you just want to stay comfortably within your curve. Your power supply will just effortlessly push out that power, stay very quiet, and at the same time, going anything higher than that, going like 1,000 watt plus for a single GPU CPU setup, unless you're going with like an i9, 7980XE, to me makes no sense. So that's where I would keep it, in that ballpark. Yep. Okay. Scrolling up, I'm gonna get some of the other good questions you guys have in here. Let's see here. Any solid, David H asks, any solid $50 coolers for an overclocked 8700K, or should I just grab a Noctua? Good question. $50. Yeah, I would say you could go with something. I know that CryoRig has a couple good coolers in that price range. You can go with a Quad Lumi. I use a Quad Lumi with my 8700K. You could go with, I'm trying to think of other $50 Cooler Master has a couple $50 coolers. The new Hyper 212 Evo, or 212 whatever it is, they have a newer cooler that's got a pretty high TDP as well. I would say around 150 to 200 watt TDP would be a very comfortable limit for your cooler, assuming you're going with an air cooler. So yeah, I would say CryoRig, Cooler Master in that area. And your tower is not going to be too thick, right? You go with the really expensive stuff, the stuff that's $100 plus. Those are blocks, right? Those are big, especially like the Dark Base Pro, or not Dark Base Pro, the Dark Rock Pro 4, the Noctua NHD 15. Those coolers are really beefy, and that's why they're expensive. More raw materials, the fans, the construction of the fans. So stuff to consider, yeah. But I think $50 is a good price point for that. Maybe just a little bit more. Scrolling up here. Your current gaming resolution. Silver, my current gaming resolution is 1440p at 165 hertz. Okay, let's see. Fortnite Royale. Science Studio, can you give me tips on how to grow my Fortnite channel? Oh, I don't really know. I'm not familiar with gaming channels. I don't know how algorithms work for gaming channels on YouTube. I'm not the best person to ask that question, my friend. I'm sorry. I don't want to give you wrong info. I'm just like, keep doing what you're doing. And anytime you doubt yourself, you got to keep going. Many times I doubted this channel, my ability to keep this channel at a good pace. You just got to truck through it. Everyone's going to have difficulties growing something that, it just requires organic growth. So be different. Do something different. You know, use catchy titles that aren't clickbaity because your audience won't forgive you for that. But you know, be entertaining, be a good host, and you'll probably grow. I would say it's a fair assumption. Okay, let's see. Kanze755. What's a better bang for the buck for a $1,000 build, Ryzen or Intel? I would say for that kind of price, I would say Ryzen. If you wanted to spend upwards of $1,500, I mean, bang for the buck, Ryzen's always going to be your value option. But if you want a $1,500 beast gaming PC, I would say 8700K all day. If you wanted a $1,500 beast streaming PC, I would say Ryzen 2700X all day. I'm streaming on the 2700X. What does that tell you? So that's how I differentiate the two. Because that question comes up almost every live stream, by the way. Let's see here. Scroll down to some of the good stuff. I missed a couple of super chats. Okay, there we are. Tech Crumbs. I'm seeing some of y'all's questions are pretty good. Okay, here's one. This is a pretty good one. I'm gonna get to that super chat in a second. I see, by the way. Gabe Williams asks, "What's your favorite GPU board partner?" I've worked closer with EVGA, I think, than any of the others. I like Gigabyte cards too, but I think Gigabyte can get really cheap with their cards. I mean, they have really good cards and they have really cheap cards, so they have a wider spectrum. Almost every EVGA card I've ever tested is of good quality and stays very quiet. Asus has great cards. Asus cards also kind of vary on the spectrum, though. They have very cheap cards and they have pretty expensive cards. EVGA, I mean, I know EVGA has cheap cards too, but I've had better experience with cheaper EVGA cards than I have any of the others. MSI is kind of on the same boat. Most MSI cards are going to be pretty good no matter what, but obviously if you go with the higher end stuff, then I think that just from an aesthetic standpoint, the best looking card, in my opinion, is probably got to go to Asus. Second would probably, I would say second's probably MSI, third is EVGA, fourth is Gigabyte. That's the order I would put them in, the big four in my eyes. Good question. Luis Fonseca. I think I said that right. $10 super chat. Thank you, my dude. How big of an upgrade do you expect the i7 9700K? I have a 7700K and I'm wanting to do both gaming and streaming on the same build and don't want to use Ryzen. Well, then obviously that i7 is going to be your best bet. I don't know too much about the specs, though. I haven't actually looked. I know about the i9, right? Everyone's calling it the i9. I guess that's what it's going to be called. But I'm not too keen yet on the performance numbers. I don't have those CPUs to test. Even if I did have them to test, I probably couldn't tell you because I'd be breaking some sort of NDA, and then Intel or whoever sends me chips would never send them to me anymore. But I actually don't even have an Intel contact for receiving early samples. So like the i9s, right, the 7900, the 7980XE, I got those from motherboard vendors. They're just engineering samples. They're not from Intel, or whoever distributes Intel stuff. So I don't have that connection. I do have an AMD side connection. So I get AMD stuff from an AMD networking company, whatever you want to call them, marketing company. But I don't have that for Intel. So even if those CPUs did come out, I probably wouldn't be one of the first to get those samples because I don't have contacts with whoever distributes them. So that's just how the industry works. Sometimes you either have connections or you don't. Just got to deal with it. TGS Venom, can static electricity really damage PC parts? Yeah, it can. Jay has a video on this. It's got to be a serious shock, though. I mean, obviously, enough electricity, you're going to fry something. You'll fry a cap or a resistor or something, especially when it's not rated for the amount of power that you're running through that component. But I would say under most circumstances, if you just shock a board accidentally by maybe quickly rubbing your feet across carpet, it's not going to kill the component. If it does, at least you know what caused it, and you can tell the manufacturer that. Of course, when you take apart a card, though, or anything else, you're going to probably void your warranty, so keep that in mind. Let's see here. I'm going to scroll down to... That's weird. I don't have admin privileges on my own chat. Oh, I see. Kryptonic already replied to him. Okay, do we have... Okay, Science Studio, have you had any issues overclocking SLI cards? Not really. No, I don't usually overclock graphics cards much higher than the stock overclocks. The cards are pretty smart. The software's pretty smart. It's intuitive. It knows when you have more power at your disposal, when your temperatures are in check, it'll give it a little more boost. And then when it gets too hot, it'll boost it down a little bit. It's kind of like its own like self-throttling system, but it always tries to maximize performance. I never really see the need to overclock much higher than that. Even my custom cooled cards, I don't overclock graphics cards. I overclock my CPU, but not my graphics cards. It's not something that I feel like going through the hassle of doing for that marginal FPS increase, only so that the cards in the entire loop run slightly hotter. Zombie civvies, that is a dumb question. You know the answer to that question, zombies. It is PUBG all the way. I freaking hate Fortnite. I hate Fortnite so much. Let's see, MST3K, thank you for the $5 super chat, my dude. I ordered my Antho Pro M and Cooler Master Vertical GPU kit today. Any tips on install of that? I have a video, MST3K, on literally how to install the Cooler Master kit. So just type in vertical GPU mount. My video is one of the top on that list, and it'll show you how to install the Cooler Master bracket. But I remember you asking a question in the last live stream about the same thing, so it's good to know that you went and bought that case. The Antho Pro M is a good case. I have built in that case before. Let's see. Silver asks, G-Sync, if not, is it worth it? A G-Sync it's only worth it under a few circumstances. When you're playing at lower FPS, it matters more. But if you're gonna buy like this is a 165 Hertz G-Sync display over here to my right, and if I have G-Sync off versus on, I can't really tell a difference at higher frame rates. 100 to 120 FPS, a little bit of a difference, but if I'm almost maxing out my frame rate, I can't really tell the difference. So it really matters around like 60 FPS to 80 FPS, sometimes as low as 40 FPS. It really depends on the monitor itself, and the resolution, obviously. But I would say in that frame rate range is where G-Sync's really going to count. So it's kind of funny because like G-Sync is usually in the more expensive, higher refresh rate monitors, and most people who buy those have systems that can put out that many frames. At which point G-Sync becomes obsolete anyway. FreeSync, for that matter, is the same way, even though FreeSync doesn't have as much of a tax on it. It's not as expensive in most cases as a G-Sync monitor. So, Jeffy asks, let Pepsi answer a question. Why is there no mouse flavored cat food? Hey Pepsi, that's a good question. Pepsi girl. She's out. She's totally like gone. She's so tired. MRX Kick says PUBG Mobile's where it's at. Yeah. PUBG Mobile's pretty fun. It's a little too easy, I think. I think people suck in that game, and then like the bots, supposedly the bots that they put in it are also pretty trash. So it's like a false feeling of satisfaction and like success. I don't know. That's just my take on it. Let's see. Sorry, Silver, I didn't see your super chat for that, but yeah, I guess I answered your question. Yeah, I'm using G-Sync on my personal rig, but again, the differences between it on and off at my frame rate are negligible, I would say. And I've actually done like tests with it on and off. I can't really tell the difference. John C, 499 super chat, my dude. Do you think Fantex did enough to make the new Antho or the new Evolve X one of the best ventilated cases in 2018? Not sure if it's gonna be one of the best. They claim 3 times additional airflow, if I recall correctly, from Computex, and they did definitely. You know, they recessed the case from that front panel quite a bit more than they did in the previous Evolve case. They widened the vents more. They added ventilation grooves up top, extra ones, so there's more breathing room up top as well for exhaust or intake setup. But we're gonna have to just test it. We're gonna have to see exactly, exactly what the difference is, especially with the panel on versus off, dust filter on versus off, and compare that to the original Evolve, just to see if it really is 3 times the airflow, right? I mean, it's gonna be difficult to test the airflow without like an actual, measurement tool for that. But I would say I'm gonna take them at their word for it until I get the case, because I have nothing else to go off on at this point. Good question though. Sizzle at Science Studio. What happens when you put thermal paste on the pin side of the processor? Well, if your thermal paste is conductive, then you're going to have a really bad time. If your thermal paste is not conductive, then you're still going to have a really bad time, but not from you're not going to fry components. More or less, you're probably just going to end up having to clean out the socket, which can be also a real pain. But I think it's more dangerous if you have conductive stuff. So if you put conductanaut in in a socket, then I think you're gonna have more of a problem than if you put MX4 or something that claims to be non-conductive. But good question though, I guess. Adriana Borges, what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of life? I don't know. Jazz Garcia, is a PC riser cable decent for an RX 580? I think you asked the question. I think you asked the question wrong. A riser cable is going to vary from manufacturer to manufacturer in terms of like any performance degradation you see from that. I can't tell you because you didn't ask me what PCI riser cable you're referring to. Many different kinds. There are some really trashy riser cables out there. Avoid those at all costs. Go with something from Cooler Master or Thermaltake. Lee has some good ones as well. Those I've really never had problems with except for one from Thermaltake. That was it. Yeah, so those are the big three I would recommend. Let's see. Roast Pig, is crypto mining still profitable? I don't crypto mine. I've never crypto mined. I think it's a cesspool of unregulated garbage. I'll say that every live stream if I have to. I've never touched crypto mining, and I don't think that it would be right for me to utilize cards I get for free to mine with. I just think that's, I don't know, not worth my time. Let's see. I can't say your name. Jao Pedro Bini Quitel. I don't know. Any thoughts over cooling solutions making direct contact with CPU die? I mean, obviously, yeah, they're more efficient, right? Because the IHS and the die have to be connected via some sort of thermal interface. Usually it's just a thermal compound, and it's pretty similar to what you'd put on top of the IHS to merge to your cooler. So you think of it like a sandwich, right? You got your die. That's where the heat's coming from, right? That's your heat source. Then you have a thin layer of crap from Intel, mostly. And then you have a piece of metal. And then you have another thin layer of okay stuff. And then you smush your cooler on top of that. So you have two weak points there. But if you do direct contact from the die itself to a cooler, then you have less of that heat loss due to the inefficiencies involving the thermal compound or the thermal interface. So yeah, obviously the less areas for a heat bottleneck, the better, and that's why direct die solutions are better. But they're also kind of dangerous because you could potentially damage your die if you mount something incorrectly. That's why it's not mainstream. I expect it's easier to mount onto a metal plate on top of a die, and I'm sure that's why they all do it, or at least part of the reason why they do it. Let's see. Dragnia, how much should I invest into cooling an 8700K to get 5.1 gigahertz? Ooh, interesting. I would say around, it depends on the CPU. Obviously, I can't tell you exactly how much you're going to need to throw into your cooler because your CPU could be a really trashy CPU and require a ton more voltage than another 8700K that's much better binned. We have a video on binning. It's somewhere on the channel. You can just type in binning CPU Science Studio. It'll come up. We talk about it, but there are variances from CPU to CPU because not all chips come from the same wafer. All wafers have certain degrees of imperfections. Some of those chips don't even have viable cores, and those chips are recycled down to lower end chips like the i5 lineup and the i3 lineup because not all those chips are, some of them are compromised, basically, is what I'm trying to say. AMD does the same thing with their R7s, R5s, and R3s. So you can't really, I can't just put a number or a cooler value on that CPU because I don't know how effective the overclock is going to be on that, how stubborn it's going to be from a voltage perspective. I would say in most cases, if you want that high of an overclock, at least $100. I would get a really chunky air cooler, Dark Rock Pro in HD 15 status, and then if you don't want to go with air cooling, then I would say at least a 240 mil AIO. But try not to go with one of the weaker pumps. Try to go with something a bit stronger. A Corsair H150i would be a better solution for something like that, just off the top of my head. Yeah. Okay, yeah, let's see. It's been an hour. We're going to wrap things up soon, folks, but I appreciate all of you watching. We got a little over 2,000 people watching right now. You guys are dope. Let's see here. If you guys... Let's see, what am I like? Okay, I see some good ones. Should I get an ADATA SSD from Cornell? ADATA makes great SSDs. I've used ADATA SSDs quite a bit, so I do recommend them. I've used ADATA M.2 NVMe SSDs as well. They're very fast, very reliable. They don't get too hot. They use great memory chips, memory modules. So yeah, I would say ADATA is a good brand. ADATA, Samsung. I would say even Toshiba. I wouldn't recommend Toshiba over Samsung or over ADATA, but I would usually go with those two first. That's just my preference. I've had the least amount of issues with them. Let's see. Shader Raid says, need an intern? I would totally be down for an intern if you are totally down for not being paid, because I don't have enough money to pay you. But I would totally show you the ropes if you were really into that. Let's see. Ravik Soul says, these sessions are very enlightening. I appreciate that. I'm glad that these help you out. I know this is probably recycled news for a lot of people. Like, this is the reason why I don't do like the news live streams, because I feel like everybody recycles the same crap every week. And it's hard to differentiate yourself, and that's why I like doing just the Ask Me Anything live streams, because you guys get a personal touch, right? You get me directly responding to questions that you ask. You get my feedback, my experience, and that's something that it's difficult to get in just everyday videos on the channel, just because I can't talk to 2,000 people at the same time. But thank you for all these questions you guys have been asking. You're giving me plenty of content, plenty of stuff to talk about, so it's not an awkward, like I've seen live streams where it's very awkward and like nobody talks. And like even the host, he's like not talking, he's like reading something. It takes him like 30 seconds to read. And it's like, dude, talk. Like, you're the only guy on camera. Say something. It's like, even when you're reading something, you got to still engage with your audience somehow. It's difficult for a lot of people to do. I understand that, but if you're gutsy enough to live stream and risk something going wrong, you should at least have the the drive to want to encapsulate your audience and keep them engaged to some extent, right? So they're not staring at a blank screen with you reading something that they can't read themselves. Anyway, done with that spiel. Arrow777, would you do any mods to your Audi? I know that you have already done exhaust. Would you consider a wrapper body kit? Arrow, I talked about this earlier in the live stream. I sold my S5. I traded it in for an Infiniti Q60 Red Sport. So I traded up in the power department. I got a better looking car. I got a better warranty on the car, better gas mileage. It's just rear-wheel drive instead of all-wheel drive. So I lost all-wheel drive. I lost the planted quattro feel. But it's okay. The rear-wheel drive is sporty. I have terrible tires on this car, though. I got to replace them with like Michelin Pilots or something, because the tires on there, I don't even know the name. Like, they're just off-brand tires. I'm pretty sure Infiniti put them on there because I think it was a lease before I bought it. It's only got 10K miles, but I'm pretty sure it was a lease, and they replaced the tires when it was sold or returned to the dealership, and they just put like the cheapest tires they could on there, obviously, because why would you put the best, unless you're going to charge more for it? Keep the price down, right? More bids. And I think that's what they did. And I can't get grip for crap, especially like in first gear. It's impossible. Second gear, even I spin tires. So Michelin Pilots, I think, are coming up. But then I'm debating whether or not I should go, because I have a staggered setup, right? So I think I have two 65s in the rear and I have two 45s up front. For those who don't know what that means, it's the width of your tire, basically. And the rear tire... I don't think the rear tires are wide enough. For one, I think I'm going to step up to like 285s, but then I got to get new rims, which is also going to cost more money. I like the rims on my car, but I'll probably step up to 20-inch rims. And then up front, I think 255s, so maybe 255, 285, or maybe as high as 295. And if I go Michelin Pilots, it's just going to be instant grip. And they're all-season tires, even though they're sport all-season tires. A lot of good reviews on the Michelin Pilots. The Deranged Gamer, think about that $5 Canadian, my dude, looking to build a gaming PC soon. Should I go with a 10 series GPU or wait for 11 series to launch? It's up to you. I really can't answer that question for you. Every time someone asks this question, I'm just like, well, I'm not you. I don't know what you want, how badly you want it. But if I was you and I was just, casually looking, I would casually continue to look until we hear about some sort of release date for the 11 series launch. Because while 10 series cards have definitely come down considerably in price, unless you found one for a really good deal that you think you could resell and get most of your money back from, I would wait. Unless you need the system right now, I would wait. Exactly, JP. It's almost like, when people ask this question, I'm not trying to knock on you, Deranged Gamer. When people ask this question, I almost feel like just saying, if you want to wait now, then what's stopping you from waiting a year from now? Like, you have to have a deadline in your head when you want to have something. When I was going to buy my car, I didn't know when I was going to do it, right? I'm using this because I was just talking about the Q60, but I didn't know when I was going to do it, right? Eventually, you get tired of looking. You're just like, all right, screw it. I'm just going to go out and do it. And you just got to tell yourself you're going to do it, and you go out and do it, and you don't second guess yourself. You have a number in your head, a price that you want to pay, and you stick to your guns. And if the price that you want to pay doesn't line up with what the dealer is willing to sell the car for, then you move on. That's a sign that you need to wait. But if you get what you want for it, then there's your cue. There's your open door, whatever sign that you're looking for, that you should get it. I know it's different with PC parts because you can't really haggle with the PC parts, but if you're scrolling and you're saying, okay, if I find a GTX 1080 for $400, I'm going to buy it right away. commit that in your head, right? Commit to yourself that you're going to buy a card that you see for that price whenever you see one. And if you don't see one for that price by the time 11 series come out, then look, you waited. But if you didn't wait and you saw a card that cheap and it was a one-time sale and you bought it, you're going to be happy with yourself anyway because you got a really good deal, right? So you kind of got to just make ultimatums, and you got to stick to your guns and just buy something when you see it on sale. You have a number in your head. Let's... Joe says, Greg, is that how I should be with marriage? Like, you get tired of looking and just go out and do it? Oh, Joe, that is a comment of the night. I love that. That was a good twist. I don't recommend you just go out and do it, though. This is a big commitment. It's not like buying a car. You can't just go around and sell it. I mean, you could return it. You could get a divorce, but I don't, if you're going to marry with the intent of getting a divorce, if you don't like the marriage, then you shouldn't get married in the first place. The way I see it, it's a huge commitment. It's a lifelong commitment. That's what marriage is supposed to be, right? The vows that you exchange with each other, it's supposed to be lifelong. So when you make that kind of commitment, I would, Joe, I would take that a little more serious. But that's good. Biblical knives. Does it matter what direction you face your CPU cooler? Try to face it up front. If you have intake fans, they're going to be less restricted. If you face it from down below where it's pulling up air, you're going to pull up warm air from your graphics card. It's less ideal. You're going to be pulling warmer air, so the T delta is slightly different. It's slightly lower, and when you have a lower T delta, then your conduction is going to be you'll be conducting heat at a lower rate, right? Because the T delta is lower. So that's just like elementary thermodynamics, but you know what I mean. So if an object is already pretty hot, and you put it up against something that's producing heat, that's generating heat, then it's not going to conduct as much energy as a colder unit would. Being able to pull colder air is necessary. It's recommended. But if you can't get that cooler to face the front and you have to face it down, this was the case with some older Hyper T4 coolers and the old AM3 Plus socket, then you have no choice, right? Either to arrange it from the top or from down below. I guess you could face the cooler from the top and have it pull in that way, but then you're just pulling dust and stuff. Heat rises, that tends to bother people, but I think I'd rather pull air from the top than I would pull hot air from down below, especially if my graphics card is under load. Someone asked how old I am, Interstellar. I am 23. I'll be 24 in a couple months. Let's see, Jazz Garcia. Do you have any recommendations for a good $50 or under mid-tower case for an RX 580? Jazz, I literally have like a $50 case review on the channel that I recommend. I recommend spending a bit more though. The Fantex 350X is a great case for $60. Consider that strongly. Jorge Pena, Vega 64, worth it anymore? If you can get it for a good price, I wouldn't pay any more than about $400, maybe $450 for a Vega 64. I would say 400 is probably my magic number though. If I saw a Vega 64 for $400, I'd snatch it. But most of the time, you'll find Vega 56 for that price. The Deranged Gamer, $2 Canadian, whatever. Is $2 Canadian? Like, what is that? And I'm just curious. I don't care how much money it is, but I'm just curious. Question for everyone: Windows 7 or Windows 10? Interesting question. If you ask me, for gaming, Windows 7, probably in my experience, although you're going to lose a few drive support. I'm sure drive support is going to be a little crippled on Windows 7. Most of the programs that I use aren't going to care one way or the other, but there are a few that are going to favor Windows 10. Obviously, you get DirectX 12 support, Windows 10, a few other APIs, but in general, I'm not really picky one way or the other. That's just me, though. Let's see. I'll answer 2 more questions. Give me some good questions, folks. I need the juicy stuff to end this one. I want to end on a really good note. Really good. Okay, $2 Canadian is $150 US. Well, I appreciate that $150 US super chat, my dude. Thanks, Bazinga, for the conversion. Tech Rims is a 2 Canadian is 25 US cents. It goes up and down every day. Let's see. Okay. I see the good stuff. You guys are asking good questions. I see the good stuff. Let's see. Okay. Snowdrifter. With the trend to many core CPUs with Ryzen, okay, and Intel following suit, how long do you think it'll be until we see more multi-threaded support for games such that clock speed is no longer king. I don't think it's, this is just my take on it. I don't think it's ever going to catch up, because I think developers have to weigh the advancements in technology with what a majority of their consumers are using. And even though we have new stuff rolling out every year, every half year, depending on who you are, you know, AMD took 4 or 5 years to come out with Ryzen, right? But if you have those incremental steps, you're going to have people who jump on board right away. But I guarantee you have just as many people, if not more people, stay behind on the older platforms. And when you have those people still playing games that are relatively new, those developers can't leave those people behind. So people on, 4-core systems or 2-core systems, they're gonna, their fate rests in the hands of their clocks, basically, because they're gonna be bottlenecked no matter what from a core perspective. But developers know that a lot of their users are using lower core count chips because not everyone can afford the new stuff. So if you left them behind, you would discourage that consumer and you would lose a good chunk of your loyal fan base. So there's always a constant tug of war, right? There's always a, do I want to, favor people who have the new stuff? Obviously, they're going to have an edge no matter what. So I think that there's more or less an incentive to scale back a little bit and not, I'm sure developers out there could program games that would optimize 20 cores beautifully. But then you know what? That game would run terribly on an i3 from 2015, right? So it's a good question, but in my opinion, I really think you're going to be held back, not because the developer can't optimize, but because they choose not to, because they'll be leaving many valuable consumers behind. That's my take. I'm interested to see what you guys think about that as well. Let's see. Scrolling down. Joe, did you just ask Apple, Mac, or PC? Did you just ask that, Joe? I think there is a very specific skill set for Mac OS. And in most cases, for me, that has to do with Final Cut Pro. And I've talked about this in my MacBook reviews and whatnot. But 90% of the time, anytime I'm in the office when I have a desktop, it's going to be a Windows desktop. That's just because what I use, what I need, Windows is the better option for that. Also, Hackintosh is good. God, those are a pain. And I've I looked at some of the instruction sets for setting up a Hackintosh system. You guys have been asking for one of those. Oh my, that is a handful. Let's see. Scrolling up here. Kirk says 760 is still pretty decent though. Yeah, one of my old cheap builds had a 760 in it. It's still a decent graphics card. It actually is. I was surprised. Let's see here. I just answered your question, Bliss Life, about Hackintosh. Okay. Let's see. I'm scrolling down. Patrick asks, would you take your pants off on stream? Absolutely not, so it would probably get me banned. So no. Let's see. Joseph Keno, what's going on? He says, hello, Greg. What's going on, Joseph? We have, let's see, one more good question, then we're going to do our awesome emoji ending. You guys who stick around for the ending, you're going to bomb me with emojis. Just give me a second. One more question. GTX 1060 6GB versus GTX 980. It's a good question, Jonathan. I would say, or no, that's Ryan. Excuse me. Ryan Nickel asked that question. If you can get a 980 for cheaper than a 1060, I would say 980. Just because, I mean, if you can get a 980 for like $200, I think that's a pretty good value. But if you can get a 1060 for around $200, that is a 6GB 1060, not a 3GB, because you'll be limited by your buffer there. Then I would say go with 980. Unless again that 1060 6GB is around $200, which I doubt. Usually you can get the 980 for pretty cheap. You might be able to even more now recently because prices have come down quite a bit. But that's just my thing. Fridge Musa says, notice me. There you go. There's your shout out. Jordan Spinner asks, would you consider growing out your hair to compete with Steve? I've done that before in middle school. My hair didn't go like this, right? Steve has those beautiful locks. I have this problem where it goes this way. Literally, I'll grow an afro. Like, that's what it becomes. And there's a picture of me in middle school, 6th grade middle school. I had super long hair. Like, I'd pull the hair out and it would come out to here. But the problem is it never grew down, it grew out. And it was very difficult to maintain, and it just looked pretty bad in my opinion, especially now. So that's why I haven't grown it out very long. Short hair is easier. It's just It's easier. All right, folks, that is the end of this stream. We are going to now request that you bomb the chat with your favorite emojis. This is your time to spam the chat. Spam it right now. You have my permission. You're not going to get blocked or anything like that. Spam the chat with your favorite emojis, and that's going to be the way we end the stream. I love doing this at the end. We've been doing this for the last 3 or 4 live streams at the end, and you guys are awesome. So I'll try my best to give you guys shout-outs when I see them. Just go ahead, send them my way, and when I start seeing them, I'll give you the shout-out. Let's see. I'm waiting for him to roll up. Mick Ross says, can I have Pepsi? I require more cats. 2 is not enough. Let me tell you, 1 cat is enough for me. Thanks for joining and sponsoring us, by the way. Let's see. Okay, I see you, Jorge. I see you, Jazz. I see you, Hender, Op Jesus, False Guy, Robert. I see. Send them all my way, folks. Jace, Jazz, what's going on? Alpha, Fridge Musa, Batsy22, Enrique Lopez. So many. Del Ivanov. I'm seeing Bazinga. What's going on? I see you again. Hydrofall. You like that? It reminds me of the Breaking Benjamin song, Diary of Jane. Would you like that? Deranged Gamer. What's going on again, my dude? Brandon Smith. I see Wesley. Oh, gosh, there's so many now. Oscar Sanchez. Smoothie. Your 3. Yupik Hannah. Zap18. Sub-Zero. That's a cool name. Oh, gosh, there's so many. I'm falling behind now. I can't even read them. Tyler, MRX, Kick, Brandon, John, Robert. Oh, it's so difficult to read. Red Arrow, Tails. I can't read them. Let's see. Oscar, Tech Crimson. Thanks for modding, by the way. Shamsul. Oh my. McRaw. Robert One Bliss. I am Groot. Mick Ice. Okay, all right. That's I can't go any more than that. You guys are awesome. Austin, I see you. What's up, Josh? This is overwhelming. I appreciate it, you guys. Thank you for bombing the chat with your emojis, your favorite emojis, to end things this Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on where you live. This is Science Studio After Hours. This is our live stream we run every Sunday night here on the East Coast or the Gulf Coast in the U.S. Again, especially if it's your Monday morning, I appreciate you stopping by. If you're working while you're watching, if you're just hanging out on a Sunday night because school's not in session yet, I don't care. Whatever your excuse is for spending time with me, I appreciate it. I really do. And we'll be back here next week to do the exact same thing. If I missed your question, save it for next week. We'll be back here again. Remember, same time, same place here on YouTube. This is Science Studio, just in case you didn't know the channel name. I'm going to end the stream now. See you guys next week. Ciao.